Hey, 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 yeah, hey, what a time to be alive. I left them for dead, now I'm living right. No new friends, no new advice. That was high then, but we got bigger heights. We got bigger fish to fry. Bet on myself, then I roll the dice. Man, it ain't a gamble if you know you nice.
All right, welcome back, Dawn a Dream Podcast. I'm your host, R. Amen, and today we have my special guest, Andre DuCille, CEO and founder of the Freedom Alliance.
That's it, TFA, baby.
TFA. Awesome, man. So what I love about your story is that you've been a paramedic. You were a paramedic for, was it 20 years?
Yeah, just over 20 years, 23 years. 23
years. And you went from, like, saving people's lives, like, in the heat of the moment, to going into the front end and saving their financial life.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into that, I kind of want to know your story, your background, maybe like 2-minute story of where you were born, what was family like growing up, and who was Andre as like a kid.
Yeah, well, I was born in Kingston, Jamaica.
Okay.
Both my parents are from Jamaica, and my father's parents relocated to the States to look for a better life.
Okay.
All right. And, I was born in Jamaica, and when I was 2, my parents decided to relocate to South Florida from Jamaica. So I came along when I was 2, not a whole lot of choice or option at that point, but came over when I was 2, had a very normal, typical childhood. We moved to a city called Tamarack, Florida. That's kind of like where I grew up. From Tamarack, we moved to a city called Coral Springs, Florida. And that's kind of like where I really spent when I was like 9. Mm-hmm. And that's where I spent the majority of the rest of my childhood up through high school. And normal childhood, lived in South Florida. So, it's, Disney once a year and Universal Studios. And, we got the port right there, going on a cruise ship, going on vacations. I remember my parents always working like really hard. And even to this day, I remember like the sacrifices that they would make just for my brother and I to have like a better opportunity, and that never left me. So, what was like normal for me was just to see people just like bust their butt all the time. That's like my normal was just to watch people like bust their butt with no excuses. So
that's really cool. I love that. We're very similar in that. I came here when I was 2 years old as an immigrant, and my parents, I saw them bust their tails, and that's all I know. It's so. So you have a brother. Is it older or younger brother?
Younger brother.
Younger brother. And what was it like growing up with a brother in South Florida? Was there like fights going on? What was it like?
Oh, of course. I mean, he was my younger brother, so he was annoying. And he always wanted to be in my room, and he always wanted to hang out with my friends. But, we had a very typical, we're 2 years apart, so we were super close coming up, wrestled, playing, having fun. But I was always like very outgoing. Even at a young age, I was like, my brother would come to me like, "Hey, I like this girl." He's like, "Can you just write me a note? Like, help me write a note." I was like, "Yeah, man, I got you." And I'd write him his love notes to this girl that he wanted to pass a note to in school. But yeah, he looked up to me a little bit, and we were close, and typical normal childhood.
Cool. And what was who was Andre DuCille like in high school?
Oh, man, Andre DuCille in high school. I was very outgoing. High school is really where I started to notice, like, my personality, and I started paying attention to, like, the person that I was going to become. And you may not realize this, and it may not make a whole lot of sense to you, but I'm very introverted. Like, I'm a really big introvert. But it's weird. Like, I was, like, in theater in high school, like, loved theater. And I did backstage and a little bit on stage, but I definitely preferred being more backstage because I didn't want to be on stage with the lights because I'm very, very introverted, but I like the sound and the lights and the microphone. I did all that. And it even got to the point where they would pull me out of class. Like, the principal would come to my class and he would say, "Can we borrow Andre for a second? We need somebody to turn on the lights and the sound and set up the equipment in the gym, in the auditorium." And they would pull me out of class to go do it. And then it got to the point where they literally put me on the payroll.
No way.
I was on the payroll for Coral Springs High School, and they would rent the auditorium out to churches and other groups, and I would go there, like legit had a key to the school while I was still in high school. And I would go there on weekends, set everything up, and my job was just to sit in the light and sound stage booth and run the production that they had going on over the weekends, lock everything back up, and I would leave.
So what did you want to do when you were at this point in life? Like, what was your dreams?
Firefighter, paramedic. Like, there was no...
The whole time?
My grandfather... Funny story. My grandfather took me to a firehouse when I was 8. And, you know, like every good grandfather should. You know, that's what you're supposed to do. Your grandfather.
Yeah.
Take your kid to the fire station, right? And he brought me there when I was 8. They were living in Port St. Lucie at the time. And I just remember that was like the coolest thing. Like the firefighters came out and, you know, they opened up the doors and they let us in and they're showing us the trucks and showing us all the equipment. And while I was there, they got a call. And it kind of startled me at first. You know, the alarms went off and like it went from like this very relaxed, cool like tour environment to very quickly everything changed. And I just remember being enthralled by that. I was like, what is, like a second ago we were just having a conversation like you and I are having now, and then like within a second the alarm goes off, the lights go off, and everything changes, right? And I remembered being enamored by that. I was like, that is the coolest adrenaline rush that I've experienced. Even at 8 years old, like I still remember it, and I remember watching them come down the pole and getting dressed, and the lights and the sirens they took off. And I said, "That's what I want to do." I said, "That's
so
what
at
I
8
want
years
to do."
old.
At 8 years old, I knew what I wanted to do, which at the time I thought was going to be for the rest of my life.
Right.
Yeah.
So okay, you're doing theater. You're in charge of this. So, in your mind, like how what was did you go to college? Like what was that transition from? You know, because you want to do theater, or you're having fun doing theater, you're passionate about it, and then you go, what was the next step?
Well, so in high school, I joined the Explorer program.
Okay.
And as a fire explorer, I got to go to like the fire station. So like I spent all my weekends in the firehouse running 911 calls. First time I did CPR, I was 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I still remember it was in a gas station. Guy just passed out, stopped breathing, and did CPR and got him to the hospital. Like I still remember it to this day. And so I lived in the firehouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I was not in school, I was at the fire station.
Okay.
And I did that. So I always knew that that's what I wanted to pursue for a career. But I did love the theater. Like I absolutely loved the theater. We'd go away on like retreats with the troupe, and we would go do performances, and I was running the lights and the sounds and doing the whole thing, running the whole production. But I knew I was going to be a firefighter, paramedic. So the theater thing was just more of a hobby, and the EMS was like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. So I joined the Fire Explorers, and then while I was still in high school, I found a private EMS academy that allowed me to start EMT school, even though I didn't have my high school diploma.
Oh, wow.
So there were requirements. They're like, hey, we'll let you start but you have to graduate high school before you can graduate this program. I was like, okay, great. So I literally just timed it out, and I got into the class that allowed me to graduate high school. Then like 2 weeks later, I graduated EMT school.
Oh, wow. So you had this planned out.
Yeah, I planned it out like to a T. Like I got their curriculum. I'm like, okay, if I start on this class, I won't. I graduated in June of 1996, so I need to complete like in July, and that's exactly.
Where did you become so technical? Where did this begin? Because okay, you are like I love it because you are one of the most technical people I have probably ever came across, and I think I'm technical. Like when it comes to the STAR test, I'm technical first.
Sure.
But you're on a like a no, sorry, I'm action first, then technical. So I just go do things and then I figure it out as I go.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this: what is your? I assume you're technical first.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Technical structure, action, relationship.
Yeah. So where did this stem from?
I don't know. I honestly probably the fire service. Just being in that environment. That's an environment where you can't really make a mistake.
I got you.
You know what I mean? Like if you make a mistake, somebody dies.
Yeah.
So even at 15 years old, I'm like, if I'm not doing CPR correctly, this poor guy who's already having the worst day of his life, like if I'm not doing it right, I'm not doing him any service whatsoever. And if I'm not honing my craft and my ability, the Joe public out there, you don't get to determine who shows up when you call 911. Like you don't get, it's not like you can call me like, oh, I want Andre, right? So I took that on as a great responsibility that I could not do the visitors and, citizens of the city of Coral Springs a disservice by not being on top of my game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I started teaching. Like I started teaching like CPR class very, very early. I taught advanced cardiac life support. I taught basic cardiac life support. I taught pre-hospital trauma life support. I taught EMT school. I taught paramedic school. I taught the fire academy. And I did those things not only because I wanted to give back, but that forced me to keep my skills sharp. So I knew if I taught something, I couldn't stand before a class and start teaching and delivering a message if I didn't know it. So what did that force me to do? That forced me to go in the books, study, keep my skills up, keep up to date on what's going on within the industry. And I just adopted that from a very, very young age. So efficiency for me is just always been something that makes sense. So if I'm going to get from point A to point B, like what is the most efficient way to get from point A? I would rather spend 40 minutes researching how to get from A to B and then get there in 10 minutes than spend 5 minutes researching and it take me 40 minutes.
That's so funny.
Right?
Because I'm just like, go.
That's my wife, by the way. That's my wife.
Shout out Monica.
Dude, that's my boo. That's my queen right there. She's just like, that's legit her thing. We'll just figure it out on the go. And I'm like, that don't make no sense to me. That don't make no sense to me. I'm like, let's just plan it out. She's like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, okay.
That's funny.
But I think that's why we work.
So how did y'all meet?
I was her boss.
At EMT?
Yeah, so
As a paramedic? Okay.
So 10 years into the fire service, into my career, like I still loved it. Like I still loved doing what I did. I still love saving lives for a living. But I was headhunted by an air ambulance company.
Okay.
And I got hired at 22, so I'm like in my early 30s at this point, and I got headhunted by this air ambulance company. And the one thing I know for sure, if I didn't get in the EMS, fire and EMS, I wanted to be a naval aviator. Like I wanted to fly jets. Top Gun came out in 1986. To this day, still my all-time favorite movie. I can quote the entire movie from start to finish. It's my favorite movie. And that was just something I'm like, man, that's cool. Again, more adrenaline, more like that show's always kind of like been my thing. And that movie came out and I was like, man, I wish I could do it, but nothing ever trumped fire and EMS, right? Mm-hmm. And then when I was headhunted by this air ambulance company, I'm like, wait a minute. I can fly in private jets. I get to go to third world countries, pick up people that are desperate for care and get to bring them. So I still get to save lives, but now I get to do it in a jet, flying at 50,000 feet at, Mach 0.91. I'm like, well, that sounds like fun. Let's do that. So I did that. I left the fire department and I went to this air ambulance company and I started off there just as a line flight medic, just as Joe Blow, regular flight medic, and just showing up for my flights, going home, showing up for my flights, going home. And then I worked my way up really quickly.
You said this is 10 years in? You made the switch?
So, yeah. 10 years in the fire service. And then I made the switch to become an international flight medic. And while I was doing that, I worked my way up in that company. And that's where I learned a lot of the principles and life lessons that I apply today was in that.
Like what?
So one of the very first ones that stands out to me, I was still new with that company, looking to make a name for myself. And my program director, her name was Lisa Seebacher at the time. And really incredible boss. She was probably my first mentor.
Okay.
If I could say it, I would call her like my first mentor.
And how old were you when you got your first mentor?
30 in early 30s.
Wow.
When I went there. And but I didn't realize it then that she was my mentor. She was just my boss, right? Now that I have a very good understanding of what a mentor is, I can look back now and be like, now I realize how much she mentored me in my career. I didn't realize it then, but she just kind of took me under her wing, and I'll never forget this. So there was another paramedic that was there. A guy had been there long before me. He was kind of helping her run the department. And I guess she had asked him to do something weeks ago, and it just wasn't getting done. And at this point, I started making my way into the office outside of just flying. I was just I would just show up. Hey, what's going on? You know what I mean?
Okay.
I just wanted to her to be like, hey, I'm here. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
just
I'm
show your, make
somebody-
your presence known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need it. Or if a flight came in, I just wanted to have the first right of refusal, right?
Yeah.
So I started showing up. She was asking this guy, his name was John, and I guess she gave him this assignment for like weeks. Just when she's like, hey, can you just take care of this for me? And she told me what it was, and I was like, yeah, I got it. And like 2 hours later, I go, here you go. And she goes, what? And I'm like, yeah, I did this, blah, blah, whatever. Here you go. She goes, you're done? And I said, yeah. And at that moment, like, she realized, okay. Then she gave me another task, just knocked it out and gave me that. And then within like 2 weeks later, I was her chief flight medic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I took over the department.
Wow.
And I was there only 4 months at the time.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to so that's hang on, I want to so many things I want to unpack with that. So, how important is it when you got your first mentor? Compared to like everything else in your life, did you like was there guidance or like expand on that?
Yeah. So like with her, like I said, I didn't view it as a mentor-mentee relationship. I reviewed it as an employer-employee relationship that blossomed to a friendship, a genuine friendship, somebody that I can go to and process things with and talk to and would be there for me, went to her house for, barbecues and pool bar. So I never really processed the mentor-mentee relationship with her. But, reflecting on it now, there are so many skills and applications that I took away from that job that I apply now to my everyday life. In my business. So I look back at it now and I'm just like, I wish I would have realized how I could have probably gotten a lot more out of that experience had I processed it as a mentor-mentee relationship. I probably would have leaned on her more. You know what I mean? For guidance for certain things. But, it was really at that moment, I kind of like realized, I was like, man, having somebody in your corner, somebody that genuinely cares about you and you genuinely care about, is important. And when somebody's kind of like where you kind of aspire to be and they're willing to take you under their wing, you don't find that every day.
Right.
You don't find that every day.
So you started working on the private jets and you're traveling. This is your first time traveling a lot as a paramedic?
As a paramedic.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where are you, what's going on when you're traveling? Like what's life like?
So at the time, I'm single, dating here and there. I live in South Florida. I was living in Coral Springs. I was 20 minutes from Fort Lauderdale Beach. I was making good money. My starting salary with the air ambulance company they matched my 10-year salary with the fire department. Right. So I was making good money. I loved what I did. It was combining my two favorite things, EMS and aviation. And so life was good. I had this little, townhouse that I'd bought back in 2005, and it was just me. It was 3 bedrooms.
Wow.
2.5 bathrooms, and it was just me, right? I had this house, and I had a great life, and I had my little German Shepherd dog, and it was just us. And I would go to, I would get called in for a flight, and I'd show up. It was one of those things it was on call, which I really liked. I never understood the Monday through Friday. I've never had a Monday through Friday 9-to-5 job ever in my life.
Wow.
I've never had one. I don't fully understand that system. It never really made sense to me. Monday through Friday 9-to-5. So what I liked about it, I was on call from home.
You don't like the structure? What doesn't register?
I don't.
Because the more I'm doing it, the more I'm realizing how crazy 9-to-5s are. But I'm trying to figure out what it is.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. It's like prison.
It is. It really, really is. And most people, I'll say to you like this, if your whole life you're fed a crap sandwich, you're going to eat that crap sandwich and you're going to say, damn, that's good. But the second you experience a steak, a good ribeye, you'll never go back to that crap sandwich. But if the crap sandwich is all you'll be like, hey, that's cool.
And is it because it's during the day? Like you don't have any daylight?
I don't know if I would go. I don't know if that. I just didn't like just the mundane. It's like, okay, get up, and that's like what I watched my parents do. They had the work ethic. I saw that, but it was the same thing every single day. And I think that had a lot to do with why I became a paramedic, because even in 23 years, no 2 days were alike. I can run 1,000 cardiac arrests. They'll all be different.
Yeah.
I can run 10,000 chest pains. They'll all be different. So I liked not having like to do like that same thing just like over and over. Like watching my dad like get up at 5:30 every single morning, like, brush his teeth. He would eat his cereal. He would leave. He'd go to work, come home, eat dinner. We would watch The Simpsons at 8 o'clock, 8:30 bed. And then it was just like Groundhog Day, like every day. And I'm just like, man, like when, like, it just never made sense to me. It never made sense to me. And I think that was one of the appeal of the fire service was I watch everybody what? Hates Mondays and looks forward to Fridays.
Yeah.
Right? In the fire service, I worked 9 24-hour shifts a month. So I just worked every third day. So literally for me, every day I worked was a Friday. Because every day I worked, I had 2 days off. Every day was a Friday. So it was like, it was great.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Every single day was a Friday. 1 day on, 2 days off. 1 day on, 2 days off. 1 day on, 2 days off.
Why do you think 9 to 5s are glorified?
I think it's what's needed for this whole experiment to work.
Okay.
I think you got to have, like, think about it.
The
like,
worker bees.
You got to, that's exactly what I was going to say. You have to have your worker bees.
For the hive to function.
Right. You have to have it. Right? And that's why entrepreneurship is so difficult. Right? And I love it. I love the fact that it's difficult. I like that it's not easy. I love the fact that it's something that you really, really have to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And you have to commit to it. And you just got to go through that grind. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no way around it.
Yeah.
You just got to, it's a filtering process, right?
Yeah.
And you just got to go through it. But like once you pay your dues, like, and you get through it, it's like, man, because I'll tell you, I remember when I first got hired, I was 22 when I first got hired. So I started very young, right? I got hired firefighter paramedic 22 right out of the gate. And, I think my first paycheck was like $900. To me, I was freaking rich. But at this time, I had my house, I had adult bills, and I was making $900 every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember the first few years of me being a firefighter paramedic was not easy.
Yeah.
Right? It was tough, and it was a struggle, and it was a grind. But what's the difference between the two? At the end of that scenario, I was still living paycheck to paycheck. It was still a struggle. It was still a grind. And there was just no end in sight. There was nothing in sight. It was like, you're just going to work. Now you talk to people, nobody even believes retirement's even a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Right? People just believe that, well, I'm just going to work until I die, and that's it. And that's just how we've been conditioned. That's how society's been conditioned to believe that you literally now accept that as reality. Well, I'm just going to work.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's what they want.
Who's they?
Yeah. That's a different podcast. That's a different podcast.
I want to go back to you traveling as a paramedic, because you spoke. I think we had like a brief conversation at one point, and you were telling me that you were scuba diving, and I don't know if that's related to you actually doing the paramedic flights, but you were doing all this crazy adventurous stuff. What were some of the crazy adventures you had, and what were some of the crazy like moments you lived as a paramedic on these travel adventures?
Well, the scuba diving was with the fire department.
Okay.
So when I was with the fire department, I was on their dive rescue team.
Okay.
And I became a dive rescue specialist, diver. So it's a class you have to take. It's a certification. Like you have to go get. It's not like your open water. Like I lived in South Florida my whole life, so I had my open water, my PADI, and I would just go scuba diving. And there's limitations, 150 feet and yada yada yada. Your DR1 certification. Now you're diving in murky lakes. You can't literally see your hand in front of your face in South Florida, so there's alligators in every open body of water in South Florida. So there's a whole different dynamic to it. But yeah, if you were just driving and you end up in a canal, or that was my job. I reported in as an active dive rescue specialist that day, every shift that came on, and instead of throwing on an SCBA tank to run into a fire, I put on a scuba tank, and I would go in that canal to go pull you out of the car. But
so you're going in the waters with alligators and crocodiles.
Yeah.
Did you ever like come face to face with one?
No, because again, you can't really see at all. Literally, you cannot see your hand in front of
So
your
why
face.
are they not eating you?
I don't know. I don't know. I grew up in South Florida. Alligators don't really. They don't mess with you.
They don't. I'm like terrified of alligators and crocodiles, and sharks.
Yeah. So I think growing up in South Florida, like alligators don't bother me, and hurricanes don't bother me at all. Like I can ride out a Cat 5 hurricane, take a nap, I'm good. You just grew up with it.
Yeah.
Now I come here in Dallas, like if the wind starts blowing, I'm like, what was that? Like I'm terrified of a tornado.
Really?
Yeah, like a tornado.
Tornadoes are nothing. We have them all the time.
Exactly. So that's my point. So I just think it's just you just become a product of your environment.
Yeah.
Right. So and at the same time, again, like when that moment came, if you're in that water, I owe you every second. Like I don't have time to hesitate. I don't have time to think. I don't have time to like, am I going in? I don't have time to be afraid of it now. It's at that moment, it's the decision's already been made when I decided to get my certification.
Right.
So I already made the decision I'm getting in this water then. Now I just have to execute and be sure that my skills are at the highest and they're sharpened. So I never thought. I just went in and just did my job, man. That was my job.
Cool.
That was my job.
And then, so what's traveling like on these private jets? We'll explain that.
It's really cool. It's a really cool gig. Even a lot of people in fire and EMS, they'll never even get a chance to experience it. To become a flight medic is just like a whole nother like level, because as a regular street ground medic, you're really trained to care for somebody for 20, 30 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, let me patch you up, let me stop the bleeding, let me just get you to the hospital. My job is to get you from, this scene, this accident, this catastrophe. Let me get you to the hospital. So that was my focus. I just had to figure out how to like keep you alive for 20, 30 minutes, right? As a critical care flight medic, I had flights that were 10 hours, mm-hmm. right? So you really, really had to hone your skills and really change the way you think and the way you process to going, okay, it's not just getting you to the hospital. Like I got to keep you alive, right? And we're not taught all these, drips and these medications and, alpha, beta blockers and all, we learn a little bit of that mm-hmm. going through pharmacology and paramedic school, but not to the extent like nurses, mm-hmm. Have to kind of go through that. So I literally had to I studied like the nursing textbooks. Like I wanted to be sure that when I was on these flights that my nurse partner could depend on me and could count on me to do anything. And then the unique thing about it is I had to train the nurses to think like paramedics. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes the air ambulance partnership such a unique one, is you have now two highly trained and highly skilled and educated people aboard an aircraft coming to save your life, right? So, because nurses are a lot of education, very little training. Paramedics have a ton of training, not a whole lot of education. It's a great combination when those two brains come together, and you could really do a lot. And that's what I loved about flying as a medic. I really got to take what I knew and I got to excel at being a ground medic, and I got to expound on it. And I was like, okay, well, I know I can save your life if you can get me to a hospital in the next 30 minutes. But how do I figure out how to translate that into now like a few hours? And it's just another skill that I had to go learn, and I had to go develop. So I just took a deep dive into it. And then once I got really good at it, I realized I really liked it. Like I really enjoyed like this, extension of care that I was providing to my patients. And I got to travel the world, man. And I'll tell you exactly how it works. It's really mm-hmm. cool. You're sitting at home. The only thing that sucks about being on call is you can't drink. Mm-hmm. You can't drink. But I'd be sitting at home. I'd get a phone call. Like, hey, I got a flight for you. Cool. Where am I going? You're going to go to Brazil. Okay, cool. Wheels up in 2 hours. You'll be back in 3 days. All right, nice. So I would show up at the airport with my flight bag, which I always had packed. Just grab my flight bag, head out the door. And I'd get to the airport. Somebody from dispatch would be there, give me the briefing on the patient, what's going on with them, what happened, where we're picking them up, what hospital, what country we're flying to, or where we're bringing them home. And I would load the aircraft with all the equipment that I needed. And, Lear 35s and Lear 45s, they would like rip out all the interior. And now it's set up like a little mini ICU. I got a stretcher in there, and, I got all the advanced medical equipment in there. And a lot of times I'm flying to third world countries mm-hmm. where intensive care is literally air conditioning and a monitor. Yeah. That's literally what intensive care is. So I would just load up the aircraft, everything we needed. Within 2 hours, we were jetting down the runway, and we're airborne. And when you're flying in that capacity, you get the distinction called lifeguard. So when you're flying, I don't know if you know this, but when you're flying, you're referred to like by your tail number. So like November 111 Whiskey Bravo was an airplane that I flew on all the time. November 444 Whiskey Bravo. But once you have the patient on board and you're flying life flight, you become lifeguard 444 Whiskey Bravo. And once you have that distinction of lifeguard, the only aircraft in the air that takes precedent over you is Air Force One.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when you're a lifeguard, we used to go to like O'Hare Airport, Newark, all these like crazy LAX, these crazy like high density, high volume airports. Whoop, we would just lifeguard triple Whiskey Bravo. We would just get priority. Everybody else would go on pattern, and we would land. The ambulance would pick us up, bring us to the patient. We would come back, and where commercial flights are like, yeah, we're 20th in line to take off. We would literally go onto the runway, taxi down the runway, turn around, and take off. And everybody else is like, what? How are we stuck? You know what I mean? So that was pretty cool.
Who are the patients that you're going to get? Who are these types of people? Like, why are we going to Brazil? Why are you going to all these crazy places? Are you bringing them back to the States every time?
Not every time. So the majority of my patients were American citizens who were traveling abroad. And while they were traveling abroad, had a heart attack, had a stroke, simple, broke their leg, broke their neck, whatever. I can't tell you how many times this happened. These people would save up their whole life to go to St. Croix, and they would get like this gorgeous bungalow on the beach, and they would put on the bathing suit, run out, not look, crack their head on a coral,
Oh,
C4,
wow.
C5 fracture, done, right? Like things like people don't like think about like what happens if you get hurt in this third world country. So for anybody who sees this, here's my tip: never leave this country without traveler's insurance. It's what pays for me to come get you.
Okay.
And an air ambulance is not cheap.
Yeah.
Right. So so they would fly or they would get down there and they'd get hurt, and like if you had a stroke, you can't fly in a commercial airliner back home, because now you're at altitude. That makes the bleed worse. So you could fly a private jet down there. We'd file it as a sea level flight, and would maintain a sea level cabin the whole flight back. You need a private aircraft to do that. You can't do that on a commercial airliner.
What are some of the craziest moments you had while traveling?
There's one. I've had several.
Okay.
There's one that stands out to me. I don't know if I should say this. There's one that stands out to me.
You should say it.
Yeah. So there's one that stands out to me. You probably couldn't do this in the States, but I wasn't in the States when this happened. I had a patient who was essentially fine. Like, she was okay. She'd had a psychological breakdown. So she wasn't injured. She just, something
crazy?
happened. Yeah, she literally just kind of she got the story goes somebody she was under the impression that somebody she loved passed away, even though they hadn't. But she was convinced that this person that she loved passed away, and she literally just lost touch with reality. And her family was a well-to-do family. So
A what?
A well-to-do family. Like, they had money. They were well-to-do, yeah. So they literally were like, hey, we want to get her help. So they flew us down there, and they paid for the private ambulance to fly her back. So I remember I fly down to get her, and she meets us at the airport.
What country is it?
I want to say Brazil.
Okay, so we're South America.
It's South America.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm definitely in South America. I don't think I'm in Central America. I'm in South America. And we're having just a regular conversation. We're just having a regular
With the
conversation.
patient?
Yeah, she's fine. She was a walkie-talkie. Like, she wasn't on a stretcher. Like, she was fine. So I'm just having a conversation with her. The pilots are filing our flight plan to head back and getting our clearances, and they're doing the weather, the whole nine. And she just goes, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And we were like, well, okay, hang on. Let's, let me get the nurse, and, the nurse will kind of go with you. Like, we didn't want to just, let her go on her own. And she ends up taking off. She just books it to the bathroom and locks herself in the bathroom. Refuses to come out. She's like, I'm not going. Now, how she was barricading herself in the bathroom it wasn't like it was a physical lock. She just got in the door, sat down behind the door, put her feet up against the wall, and just braced herself and wouldn't let us open the door. Right? So I'm talking to her. Nothing cannot convince her. This is like an hour and a half now. And the pilots are going, we need to do something or we're going to duty out and we won't be able to fly back home because pilots can only be on call for so many hours, right? So they're like, we're getting ready to duty out. We have to be wheels up in like an hour or we're going to have to spend the night here. So I said to...
Wait, is the bathroom not on the plane?
No, we're in like the terminal of the airport.
Oh, you haven't even gotten on the plane
No, we
yet.
haven't even gotten on the plane yet. We're in the terminal of the airport, and we're just like waiting for the pilots to file their flight plans for us to take off. So we're kind of like sitting like where you would be if you were like waiting to board your aircraft. And so I said to the nurse, I said, listen, I have an idea. I'm like, if we push hard on the door, I'm like, she's sitting right here. I can see her arm. I'm like, if we just drop some succinylcholine, we can give it to her. She'll pass out. We'll intubate her. We'll get her on the plane. We'll go. And the nurse looked at me. She goes, are you serious? And I went, yeah, let's do that. Right? She goes, okay. So we had to we got everything like set up, like, because when that drug makes you stop breathing.
Yeah.
So you stop breathing when you take that drug. And so we had everything set up, ready to go. And I remember I drew it up and we manhandled the door. I saw her arm and I just went, and she like flinched, but it went in. And I'm like, all right, just wait. And then like literally like 45 seconds later, the door just like opened, pulled her out. We intubated her, strapped her down, got her on the aircraft and flew her out. She woke up like an hour and a half later. We took the tube out and she's like, I'm like, yeah.
Was she okay?
Yeah, she was totally fine.
She was just talking and being normal?
Yeah, totally fine. Took the tube out, flew her home, and that's how we got her home. That was an interesting story.
That's hilarious.
That was fun.
So how'd you and your wife meet?
Yeah, back to that story. So I was actually her boss for a little bit. So when I moved up to chief flight medic, one of my roles that it developed into was Lisa was the program manager. I was the chief flight medic. So we ran the medical department for the air ambulance company. And one of my roles was I hired and fired. Like that was like one of my jobs. So I would hire the nurses, the paramedics, the physicians, the respiratory therapists, everybody, right? And I would do like an initial interview, and then we would do like interviews together, and then we would kind of go like bounce things off one another, kind of go that route. And then the company we worked for became accredited, and they got some financial backers from like some investors, and like they started growing the company, they started scaling the company. So the owner of the company says, hey, I want to start opening up other air ambulance offices around the country. So the first place that we opened up a base was in Arizona. Then we opened up another one out in San Diego. Well, while I was out in San Diego opening up that air ambulance company, I left my chief flight nurse back in Fort Lauderdale. And I was like, hey, we got a round of interviews coming through. Take care of the interviews. I'll call you at the end of the day, and let's just kind of like review the candidates, and we'll make a decision. So she's like, all right, cool. So one of the candidates that can come through while I was gone was Monica.
Mm-hmm.
And we hired her, and I remember her telling me that she wowed her. Now, my wife at the time was a respiratory therapist, so we hired her as an RT.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my roles there, as I was progressing through, I went from their chief flight medic, and I'd worked my way up to the director of training and education once we became accredited, right? And one of my roles there now was like writing like the policies on like, you know, the SOPs, and like when somebody gets onboarded, what's the steps, the procedure, the training they have to go. Because once you're accredited, the two biggest things that the accrediting body looks at is training and safety. Yeah. Right? Training and safety, those are the two biggest things as to whether or not you're going to get the accreditation. Mm-hmm. So the safety side fell more on the aeronautical side, but the training definitely fell a lot heavily on the medical side. So I created this entire training program for the air ambulance company, and she had to go through my training program. Mm-hmm. And when she came through my training program, I was like, yeah, she's kind of cute. She's cute, but we'll see. What I liked about her, and what really attracted to me about her at first, is she quickly became the person that I can count on. Like, I knew if I called her, she was picking up the phone, she would take the flight. So when you're in that environment, and you know, a lot of people are doing it per diem, even if they were on schedule, I'm like, hey man, I have you on the schedule, I got a flight for you. Oh no, I'm not available.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the fire department called and I got called in to mandatory overtime. Like, I would get a ton of excuses
Yeah.
of why somebody couldn't get on an aircraft. And if I couldn't find anybody to fly, the rule was, well, Dre, then you got to go.
Yeah.
Right? So she quickly became that person I could definitely depend on, like, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So we started using her more and more and more. And yeah, I was like, one day I was just like, hey, what do you now? She'll tell this story a little differently, but about like how we met and the way it went. But one day I just asked her, I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Want to go grab a glass of wine? She said yes, and we talked for hours, and the rest was history.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what was the next 10 years like of your career? So you're a director of training, and is this like how many more years until you step into the financial industry?
So I was there for 8 years total. So like I said, I moved up quick. I became the chief flight medic within 4 months, and within a year and a half, I was the director of training and education, and kind of went back like off the aircraft and like more managerial role within the hangar. But now it's, we're fast forwarding to, it's like 2015. And what's starting to happen is I realize I'm doing this now for 8 years. And this is kind of what happened was the more responsibility I took off the aircraft, the more my schedule became Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I wasn't like on call. Like, it literally went from being on call 5 days a week to 4 days a week to 3 days a week, 2 in the office, 2 days a week, 3 in the office. You know what I mean? And then it quickly went from not on call at all and 5 days a week in the office. And I literally found myself working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, and it didn't like happen like right away. Like, I didn't even like realize it was happening, because I was still like traveling. Like, I was still opening up air ambulance companies. So I really wasn't working 9 to 5, but it was structured. It was like Monday through Friday, weekends off.
Yeah.
But I got to travel all over the place.
Slowly gets you.
But yeah.
Slowly the Matrix is going to get you.
And it's funny because I look back at it now and I'm even kind of having a little bit of a realization as we speak. But that's kind of like what happened. What happened was I realized that I missed being a ground paramedic.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think transitioning into that role is what like got me back being a ground medic. So I ended up applying for a ground medic position in Fort Myers, which was on the other side of this state. Got it, took it, ended up leaving the air ambulance company. Monica and I relocated over there, got married over there the next year, and we had a great life. Like, she had a great job with her company. I was doing this ground medic thing. I'd missed the ground. I was back to being a first responder, and my wife's a very ambitious woman. And within 3 years of us being there, and she was just like, well, I just kind of want to see what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what's out there within the company. She's like, I don't want to leave the company. And she ended up finding this manager role. And this is kind of like just before COVID now. And she was not qualified for it on paper. So when she came to me about it, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, you should do this. Right? And I'm like, you should do this. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, listen, you're not qualified, but who cares? Just do it for the experience. And then the next time something like this comes around, boom, you'll nail it.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing you'll know about Monica, A, she doesn't take no for an answer. B, if you tell her she can't do something, she's going to do it. And she freaking nailed that interview, man. It was a 2-day interview, like 10 hours,
Oh, wow.
like each day. She had to interview with like everybody on up the chain, and she got the job.
Wow.
And the stipulation of her taking that role was we'd have to relocate to Texas.
Oh, wow.
So we're like, wait, are we really doing this? Like, are we really considering this? Like, making this move? I'm like, if we do this, I have to give up my career.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I'm not going to start all over. I got 23 years in. Like, I'm not going to start over as a probationary firefighter or probationary EMT somewhere in Texas.
It doesn't translate?
No.
So you have to be in Florida.
Not just Florida. It's your agency.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Like your agency. So even if let's say I worked for Coral Springs Fire Rescue for 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
our sister city was Margate,
Uh-huh.
right? They're right next door.
Mm-hmm.
If I left to go to Margate, my 15 years don't come with me.
Oh wow. So like you have to start like pay
All
everything.
everything from the ground up. Because think about it. Think about it. Let's say you work for Margate.
Mm-hmm.
You've been there 10 years.
Yeah.
You came up in
Yeah.
Margate. I'm in Coral Springs, a complete different city, different system, different everything. I'm there 15 years, and I come to Margate. Should now I be above you?
I don't know, man. I mean, if you did 15 years, I don't know.
It's all based on seniority, right? Because vacations, everything is all done on seniority base. So, like, let's say you had enough seniority to get the vacations that you've been wanting for the last. Now I come in. Now I have more seniority than you. I take your vacation. I take your station. I take your truck. So yeah, you have to start all over. So I knew I wasn't going to do that. Like I knew I wasn't going to start all over.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, hey, my mom was a loan officer. My dad, after he retired from American Express, got into real estate. I was like, I think I could do real estate. I like real estate. And so once we decided that we were going to leave, they gave us a year to relocate.
Mm-hmm.
So once we knew we were going to leave, I said, okay, I'm going to go take my Texas real estate exam. Let me do that. I can do it here. I can do it online.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it here. I'll knock out all the schooling. Then when we move, all I got to do is take my state and my national, right? So fast forward a year, we relocate here, and we move in. We find a great house. We move in, and then I'm here like 4 or 5 months, and I still hadn't taken my real estate exam. And that is not like me.
I was just gonna say that's not like
That
Andre.
is not like me at all. Like once I decide I'm going to do something, like I do it. And the weird thing is, I could not figure out why I wasn't doing it. Like I was literally laying. I'm like, Dre. I was like having conversation. I'm like, why are you procrastinating?
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you just getting this?
You're just
done?
thinking about it.
I'm literally thinking about it and asking myself, why am I not doing this? And because I think I'd like really convinced myself that this is how I was going to give back, right? I just spent 23 years saving lives for a living, but this will be equally valuable. Like I'll have as much value. I'm going to help people get the American dream, get that. Like I had to.
You're trying to convince yourself.
I'm trying to convince myself this is how I'm still going to provide value to my community, and I'm still going to be able to give back because giving back and being. That's just in my DNA. That's just part of who I am, right? And I'd convinced myself that this is how I was going to do it, but you can't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You can't lie to yourself. And that's kind of like when I realized that I was like, I don't know, man, maybe this isn't what I should be doing. And ironically enough, we'd gotten word that somebody that we'd worked with the air ambulance company had sadly passed away from cancer within a few months of us moving to Dallas. So we got tickets to fly back home to attend the service. And I'll never forget this. I'm literally walking down the aisle of the aircraft to find our seat, and I get a text. And the text is from a buddy of mine in South Florida. It's like, hey, I know you just relocated to Dallas. I don't know what you have going on, but I may have an opportunity for you.
Okay.
Word for word. And I look at us, and I start laughing. And Monica's like, what's so funny? And I show her the phone. And we both start laughing. And I just put my phone in my pocket and never thought
Why
about
is it so funny?
Because the guy that sent me the text was not the guy that you take any business advice from whatsoever.
Got you.
So you know how everybody has like somebody like in their circle who's just like,
yeah, I have an opportunity for you. It's like, yeah, get out of here.
yeah,
Like whatever it is, it's not good.
Yeah. So this was the guy that like ripped his pants at my wedding. Like he was literally that guy. He's the guy that ripped the pants at my wedding. So I never thought anything about it. Right?
You didn't respond?
Didn't respond.
Okay.
I did not respond to it. Just put my phone back in my pocket, sat down, attended the service, came back home. And I was using the house was a distraction. Like I was just like working on projects around the house for like nonstop. And I still hadn't gotten my, like 6 months now, and I still don't have my. And my wife, now Monica's like, bro, what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you doing? So I remembered the text from the guy. So literally it was like 2 months later, out of nowhere, I just text him back. I'm like, all right, dude, tell me about it. What is this? And he gets on a phone, and we have a conversation. And this is where the intrigue really struck me. I've never heard him speak the way he spoke before. I was like, who is this? This is not the guy that with the beer cans when we're out, when we were in our 30s. And like, this is not him.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking that. I never said that to him, but I definitely remember thinking that. I'm like, who is this guy? So so he was like, hey, let me connect you with my broker. And he's telling me that it's insurance and blah blah whatever. And again, ironically, I'd expressed a little interest in the insurance industry even before, but from like a, like let me go a franchise and go get like a, I'll be like a Jake or something.
Like a State Farm.
Yeah. And so he tells me about it. He connects me with his broker, Dean Mason. Dean I'm like, okay. He closes it. Like, I'm like, he's telling me everything. I'm like, I love everything I'm hearing. And all I kept hearing is like, all right, so you're going to teach me about money. Yeah, that's all cool. I had no intentions of doing insurance. I had no intentions of building a brokerage. I have no intention of doing anything. I just wanted somebody who was like going to teach me and educate me about finances so I can bring it back to my wife, my kid, and my family, right? I just wanted to be able to do better for us and figure out how we could level up financially. So I'm like, hey, if you're willing to teach me about finances, you don't have to say anymore. I'm in. And I get started with the company. Now, they're in Orlando, Florida. I'm in Dallas, Texas at the time. So he's telling me, he's like, hey, we're going to meet on Zoom Tuesday nights.
This is during COVID.
No, this is now. We moved here. What are we now? 2021. So it's kind of it's the end.
Yeah, I got you.
It's October of 2021.
Okay.
Now, it's October of 2021. So we're towards like the end of COVID, right? But they were still doing everything. We'd gotten back to in person. Like people were still meeting. Like things had opened back up at this point. But they were hosting like the Zoom appointments, and I remember like logging on. I'm just like, oh, this is not exciting.
Yeah.
Right. And I did it for like 2 weeks, and I literally said, I'm like, all right, this isn't. I called my buddy up. I'm like, man, listen, I think you got a great thing going on here. I see you taking this incredibly far. You got to stick with these people. I think they're going to take you places, but I'm like, I appreciate the opportunity, but this isn't for me. I'm just going to go get my real estate license, and I'm just going to focus on that. And he says, okay. And then 5 minutes later, my phone rings. It's Dean Mason. He's like, buddy, what's going on? I'm like, hey, Dean. I'm like, nothing, man. I think I'm just going to focus on real estate and see what I could do in that industry. He goes, well, before you make a final decision, let me introduce you to somebody. He's like, they're having a meeting tonight. He's like, how far are you from this address? He gives me the address. I Google it. I'm like, 20 minutes. He's like, be there tonight at 7 o'clock. He goes, ask for somebody by the name of Sheena Sapala. And tell him we sent you, and then you can make a decision after that. And I went, okay, I don't see the point, but okay, I'll do it. So I went, and I'll never forget walking into that environment for the first time and seeing a lot of people that looked like me, that were hungry, that it was a lot of energy in the room. Like the environment was just, I was like, this is insurance? I'm like, this is not insurance. I expected to see like a stuffy room with people like in suits and white hair and, you know what I mean? And that is not, I'm like, music's playing. People are excited to be there. People are welcoming you, making you feel welcome. And I was like, brand new to Texas. I didn't know nobody. So I'm like, all right, this is cool.
Yeah.
And I heard the message, and I was like, well, I'll tell you what, I won't quit today. I'm like, I won't quit today. And Sheena looked at me, yeah, come back on Saturday. And I went, okay. And I came back on Saturday, and I was like, okay, this is cool. All right, I like this. And then that's the first time I attended the BOM that Matt delivered. It was on a Saturday morning. And I remember I was sitting in the front row, and Matt finished doing his thing, and I got up and I walked to him. And I said, that is the most powerful thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And he looked at me and goes, let's go get lunch. Right? It's crazy how like they can spot it. Like they can see it.
He totally
early.
spotted it.
Yeah. I literally I'd never spoken to Matt before.
Yeah.
I'd never spoken. He didn't know me. I'm just coming out of the BOM, and I'm like, that is the most powerful thing I've ever heard. He's like, let's go get lunch. Takes me out to lunch. Starts mentoring me before I even realized again I was being mentored. And I came back from that lunch and I was like, man, okay, I really want to see what I can do with this. And that's when I started, okay, following the system and, setting up appointments and then I started experiencing I was like, man, I like this. I'm learning. I'm taking notes. I'm just following the system. Like, this isn't hard. And then one day Sheena just said, she's like, yeah, just put, the average person puts 10 appointments on my calendar. The person who gets my attention will put 20 appointments on my calendar a week. But she goes, the people that get all my time put 30. I went, challenge accepted. And I booked 30 appointments on her calendar every week for the next several months. And just working with her, like, in that capacity, I picked it up quickly. And I really started seeing what it is that we do for the community, like how we're helping people. And then I realized the value that I was now able to bring to the community. I was like, okay, this is how we can really give back. The few months have kind of gone by at this point, and it's like now February of 2022, so we're 4 months in, and I attend my first big event, like the first regional event.
Oh wow!
Yeah, To the Moon.
I was not there. I wish I was. That's the one with Dion, right?
That was one with Deion Sanders.
I look back, yeah.
And
E.T.?
Yeah, Eric Thomas.
Yeah.
And and the Hodge twins.
The Hodge twins were there too?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Right. Well,
man, I missed that.
It was a breakout. Like, I was still so new that I didn't even know you had to qualify to get into that meeting.
Yeah.
You had to do PC. It was like a PC and up meet. Like, I didn't even know. Like, literally, thank heavens, like, one of the people that was working with me, like 10 minutes before the meeting started, she's like, hey, congratulations on getting into the PC meeting. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, you got into the PC meeting. I'm like, she goes, it starts at 10, you need to hurry. Or it starts at 7, you got to hurry. So I call Monica. I'm like, we're supposed to be in this meeting. And she's like, what? I'm like, get dressed. And we get into it. And I heard their message, whether you like them, agree with them, you don't agree with them, they're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Right? And
they're entertaining.
Yeah.
They're entertaining.
They're funny.
They're fun.
They're funny. So I remember just like listening to Eric Thomas and listening to Deion Sanders and listening to Patrick Bet-David. I was like, wow. I literally came back from that event a completely different person. I had a complete paradigm shift. I had a complete mindset shift. I remember saying to Monica, I literally said, don't ever mention real estate to me ever again. I said, this is what we're going to do. I said, this is how we're going to create an impact. This is how we're going to leave a legacy, and this is how we're going to change the world.
Wow. And then when did the Freedom Alliance, when did that start?
So we came back from that event, and, we're still not MDs at that point. So, but like now we're starting to have some momentum. I think we're either FAs, seasoned FAs getting ready to be directors, or we just became directors. So we're having some success. We're starting to make a little bit of money. Like, it's starting to make sense. It doesn't happen right away. We're like 4 or 5 months in, and we're like, okay, I think I can make money doing this. And so I tell everybody, we'd gone through like several name changes. Like, the first team name that we'd come up with was SWAT, Strategic Wealth Accumulation Team.
It's not bad.
It's not bad, but I'm like, that just doesn't roll off the tongue, right? So from there, we went to WFA, Wealth for All. I'm like, oh, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
WFA. And then I was like, didn't stick. Then our next name was LFL, Legacy for Life. And I liked Legacy for Life. I'd like that. And that's what we were, like when we went on our MD run, we were Legacy for Life. And we go on our MD run, and we wrap up MD, 5 months after that, To the Moon. Like 4 months after To the Moon, because To the Moon is at the end of the month. So we wrap up MD 4 months later, and we're Legacy for Life. I remember we brought a big L for L, like when we hit our last numbers on our closeout. And this was literally the last day of July. And you know what we do in August every year, right? So literally like 2 weeks later, we're in Vegas. And now I'm attending my second big event, but I'm seeing it from a completely different perspective than my first one. Now I'm paying attention to like teams, and I'm paying attention to like certain different dynamics, and like I'm starting to I'm like, oh, that's SOS. I'm like, okay, that's Chris Hart. I don't know who he is, but I hear that name a lot.
Right.
This is that's Wazo. Oh, I know. I don't know who he is. He doesn't know who I am, but I know. So I started paying attention, and I noticed that the teams, like the brokers that had the biggest teams and the teams that were winning at the highest level, all like had so much pride in their team name.
Mm-hmm.
Like the team name is so important, right? And I was like, man, I remember thinking, I'm like, legacy is kind of vague. You know what I mean? It's kind of vague. And I literally came back from that event. And I was like, I think we should, I said to Mom, I'm like, I think we should change our team name. And she's like, to what? I'm like, I don't know. But I'm like, I think it should just have freedom. Like freedom should be in our team name somewhere, because, you know, it doesn't matter. Like what I define as freedom could be something different than you define as freedom, but we're both chasing freedom.
Right.
Like my freedom could be different, but it's something that everybody can rally behind.
Yeah.
Right. So we just like weeks, we just spent that freedom movement, freedom alliance, the freedom syndicate, the freedom this, the freedom that. And then, I don't know, man, we just landed on the freedom alliance. I'm like, TFA? Okay. Yeah, I kind of like that. I'm like, I literally, so again, here comes the T in me. I'm like, let's see what logo, like what kind of logo I can make with T, like, because it was literally between the Freedom Alliance and the Freedom Movement. And it really came down to, I thought the logo was cooler with the Freedom Alliance.
You have a badass logo.
I do like
your logo is phenomenal.
Yeah, I do. And there's a lot of like little hidden things in it too that are embedded in the logo. That most people don't know and will probably never ask about.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to ask next time. Next time I see it.
I'm not wearing my pin. I should be wearing my pin, but yeah, I did that, and I'm like, man, this is something we can all stand behind. And I'm like, we're all American, right? And at the end of the day, I don't care who you are, whether it's African American, Italian American, Jewish American. Like, it doesn't matter. We're all American, and this is something we can all get behind. Whether left, right, center, it doesn't matter. We're all fighting for our freedoms. And I was like, man, this is something we can really rally behind. And yeah, it's something that it's patriotic. It's something, you know, we have the American flag in our logo, and it means something. And I don't know, it's something I'm very, very passionate about. I care a lot about.
It's very, very well done. What was it like going from being an employee to an entrepreneur? Because you made a switch like relatively later in your career, and I know you never had a 9-to-5, but you did have a job.
Yeah.
So what was that like?
It was not hard at all.
Okay.
For me, because what I realized later on as I was moving through the process is the work ethic was already there. The work ethic was there. So what I just realized is I was just grossly underpaid when I had a job.
Wow.
I was like, it made me real. Like this opportunity made me real. I'm like, are you kidding me? Because in 8 months in this industry, in only 8 months, I made my first $10,000 in a month.
Wow.
In 23 years as a paramedic, I never came close to making $10,000. I remember like all like I was really fighting for was I'm like, I want to bring home $2,000 every 2 weeks. Like that was like my goal. If I could just find a way to bring home $2,000 every 2 weeks, like that to me was like I made it. Right? Like I remember fighting for that. And I'm like 8 months in this industry, and I'm still heavily relying on my broker, my mentors to do the majority of that. They're still doing the majority of the heavy lifting. They're still running all my appointments for me. I'm still learning, right? And I'm like, I just made $10,000 in a month, in 8 months, not knowing what I'm doing. I'm like, this system works. I'm still learning. You get to earn as you learn. I'm like, I haven't even figured this out yet. I just made $10,000. I'm like, what's going to happen when I figure this out? And that's really that's what turned my technical brain on. That's when I started diving into books.
Okay.
That's when I started taking a deep dive. I'm like, I want to go learn this. I want to go learn this stuff, right? Like, how many more people can I help? How much more effective can I be if I really learn and understand this? And now I'm able to bring value. Like, I have to be able to provide value to my community. I have to be able to provide value. And if I can figure out a way to do that, just maybe better than some other people, then great. Maybe I can have a thriving business. And that's just what I did.
What does the Freedom Alliance do to bring value to people?
Like the core of what we do is provide value in the form of education. Because so many people all the time ask me, is this sales? Is this sales? I'm not a good salesperson. I'm like, this isn't sales. And I truly don't view this as sales. I truly view this as I have a personal responsibility to sit in front of as many people as I can and educate them. That's my job. I get paid essentially to provide value in the form of education and educating you on products and services that certain people don't want you to have. Like certain people, they don't want you to understand how compounding interest work.
Wow.
They don't want you to understand how finances work. That's why financial literacy is not taught in this country, right? You could go to a prestigious 4-year college and get a fancy finance degree. And what did they really teach you? How to balance a book? You know what I mean? How P&L? That's what you're taught. Are you taught about cash flow? You know, are you taught about, you know, how money works? So once I started like Walk of Life, I started studying the spending habits of like wealthy people. Like, where do rich people put their money? Like, does Elon Musk have a 401k? Like,
Yeah.
I really started, you know what I mean? I'm like, where do these people put their money? Like, what information? I started looking at Goldman Sachs. Like, what is it that they do? Like, I just started studying the industry. Like, what is a Goldman Sachs? Like, what do I have to do to get somebody from Goldman Sachs to call me? Right? So I just started like following the trail, and I'm like, what does it lead to, and what do they do, and what are they saying to them, and I just wanted to know, like, how can I provide value? Because I see now that it's gonna be lucrative. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing, and I can make money, right? So I'm like, what's gonna happen if I figure out what I'm doing? And then the best part about it, what if I not only figure out what to do, but figure it out so well and so confidently that I could go teach anybody else how to do it. And that's where the real value came in, to know, because as a paramedic, it's not like I could say, dude, we should rock together. Let's go become firefighters together.
Yeah.
Let's become, just go through 2 years of paramedic school,
Right.
all the fire academy, and maybe after 3 years, we'll see if I can get you a job on my department. Like, I can't do that, right?
How is that different than what you do now, though?
Anybody can do this.
Explain, like the mentor-mentee. Go into that a little.
Like, this is what excites me. All right, I could just be at the grocery store. I could just be like on a walk in my neighborhood. I could be at the pool with my kid, anywhere, and just strike up a conversation with somebody, and that conversation just starts, that it goes somewhere, and I'm like, man, this person's struggling. Like it's like they're hurt, they're looking for an opportunity, and I know I have an opportunity that anybody can do if you're willing to put in the work, right? If you're willing to make that sacrifice and go through that sandwich, that poop sandwich that we talked about earlier, like as long as you're willing to make the sacrifice, you can do, like, anybody can do this. The reality is, though, what I've come to learn, not everybody will. And I think that's like probably the biggest lesson that I had to learn early. I was like, guys, like, you can do this. Like, people tell me, no, I can't. I'm like, no, you can do this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, no, you can do it. I'm like, don't quit. You can do this. And what I just realized is some people, they're just not, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think I had to really kind of understand, that even though I know anybody can, not everybody will.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing you've learned since you started that's made a huge impact in your family's life financially?
I mean, if you're talking about like outside of the technical, but I mean, if you can learn and understand compounding interest and how that works, and learning how to make independent income, when you learn how to make money in your sleep, that's freedom. I will never forget my first independent income check.
Yeah.
You'll just never forget it. And like, I remember like wanting to chase that. And I'm like, and the best part about the way I made that money is I helped somebody else make money. Like, I can't get that money unless I help somebody else make even more money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, what a cool system. Like, I sit down next to you. I'm like, dude, I love your watch. When we strike up this conversation, we start talking. We gain a friendship. You see what I do. You start inquiring. I'm like, hey, you're interested. And I show you how to make a little bit of money. And then you're like, you go take off, you become a beast. Like, just knowing that I can have a part or play a role in seeing somebody like do things that they never thought was manageable. That is what I chase. That is what I chase. Like, I just think that's the coolest thing. Just to be able to like take somebody who never had a belief in the world, never thought it was going to happen, never thought they were going to get an opportunity. And through the skills that I've been able to develop in a relatively short period of time here, just by being plugged into the system, and just following the playbook that Patrick and David laid out for everybody. Yeah. I mean, that's all. Everybody asked me, what'd you do? I'm like, I read the playbook.
Right.
I read it. I studied it. I learned it. And then I applied it. That's literally all there is to it. And to know now that I can take those skills and use those skills to help somebody else make another $10,000 in a month, and then see their eyes and watch them realize, oh, I can do this. Like, to me, I don't know. I think that's more. There's more value in that than actually me being a paramedic.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, man, that's crazy to think that you were literally saving lives. Like, you were saving lives, and now you see more value in helping people make more money and change their whole family's trajectories.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know. Did I tell you what happened to me the other day?
No.
Driving down the highway?
Please tell me.
You didn't hear the story?
I don't think so.
This was a week ago.
Okay.
Last week. I'm at the office till like 11 o'clock, and I'm driving home, and I'm on the tollway. And back in Florida, I had a leader bike. I used to ride.
Okay.
And I was a part of a group called ATR, Addicted to Riding.
Okay.
And it was a bunch of us. It was like 15, 20 of us. We would all ride like every Saturday. I had a CBR 954. Loved it. The thing was fast. Like, we would do hyper runs from Miami to Fort Lauderdale, 25 minutes. Like, stupid stuff. And I heard that familiar sound of a bike coming up behind me.
Yeah.
It's Friday. It's 70 degrees out. Weather's perfect.
Right.
I know people are riding. Yeah. Right. And I hear it. And I literally kind of like, all right, it's coming. And then, boom, like, past me.
Yeah.
Right? And I wanted to switch lanes, but I'm like, nope, don't move.
Right.
I know there's more coming.
Right.
That was the first guy in the pack. And then literally like 4 seconds later, boom, 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 and boom. And I'm just watching them. They're going through. And I was like, and I noticed what this one guy, I'm like, ugh, he's close. Like, why is he changing lanes so quickly? And then 10 seconds later, I see brake lights. And everybody's like stopping. And it's like 50 yards ahead of me, 100 yards in front of me at this point. And by the time I get up there, I see a body on the ground in the right through lane on the Dallas North Tollway. And I'm in the left through lane. So I pull over, and I'm still a licensed paramedic. Like, my license is still good, right? I pull over, I get out. The highway's pretty much shut down now. Like, everybody kind of like stopped. And I see his buddies like running back towards him, and I'm running towards him, and he's not moving. And I get to him, and I'm trying to see if he's breathing, and like he does one of those. He starts with the like the moaning. So I'm like, all right, cool. And then he starts moving, and he tries to start moving. I'm like, all right, try not to move, yada yada. And I look at his leg. He's got a nasty wound to his leg, really really bad wound. Not very little blood, but it's a nasty one. Like, I'm looking at bone tissue.
Yeah.
So like he starts coming around, and like I'm holding C-spine, and I'm holding his neck, and we're waiting for law enforcement, for fire rescue. Hats off. I don't know what agency that responded, but hats off to them. They got there quick, and they took really good care of him. Got him to the hospital. I don't know how he's doing. I'm hoping they were able to save his leg, and that he's alive and he's doing well. But I remember I'm driving home, and like the adrenaline is like still.
Yeah.
And at any other point in my life, I would have started getting that itch again. I would have been like,
because this is your dream since 8 years old.
Yes. So anytime before that would have happened, like, it would have given me like this, like, now the adrenaline's in my system. As I'm driving home, I have, like, I'm shaking a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. And so I know the adrenaline's in me, but I get home, and I kid you not, I remember going, I don't miss that.
Wow.
I don't miss that anymore. And for the first time in my life, I'm like, I don't miss that. Like, I used to live for that, right? And I think it's because I realized that I'm providing more value in what I'm doing today than I ever did as a paramedic.
Wow.
There's just more value I bring to the marketplace today.
Well, thank you for your time, Andre.
Dude, anytime, brother.
We got to do this again.
Yeah, man.